Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Welcome. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. It is always a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I am very glad to be here with all of you tonight. So let's do it. Let's have our stream.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We've got quite an interesting news item for you all. But the way these live streams work, for those of you who may not be familiar, is first I give my opening remarks. That's about whatever it is I'm planning to talk about. It's the prepared opening remarks. But while I give those opening remarks, I am keeping track of these super chat questions. We already got one super chat from our friend Gala. We really appreciate it. And we'll be answering super chats and Rumble rants on Rumble as they come in. And we'll be answering them in the second half of the show. That's the way we do it. So opening remarks, then the roll call. We find out who's watching, names and locations. And then from there, we answer people's super chat and Rumble rant questions in the second half of our show. That's the way that it works. We answer people's questions in the second half of the show. I give my opening remarks while taking note of the super chats and the Rumble rants. That's the way we do it. So if you've got something you'd like me to talk about in the second half of the show, send a super chat, send a Rumble rant. And I will do my best. I will do all that I can do to give you an answer. May not be the answer you want, but I'll do my best to try and answer your question. Now, the big announcement that we've got before we get going is I am headed to Los Angeles, and it is happening. My tickets are booked. I am flying to Los Angeles, to give a talk about peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. I'm having an event with the Los Angeles Family Church. They have invited me, very gracious host. They've invited me to be a guest speaker at their upcoming event, which is themed around peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. Now, lately, StreamYard has not been cooperating and letting me put the flyer on the screen, but I'm going to give it a try. Let's see if tonight, for some reason, it cooperates. And it's given me the rolly ball. So no. But the event is on Friday, July 7th. It is at 7 p.m. at LA Family Church in Monterey Park, Los Angeles. The address is 2301 Finley Avenue in Monterey Park. And here is the tweet with the poster and all the information you need about the upcoming event. Friday night event at LA Family Church. Here, peace in Korea. And I will put the link to the tweet about the event in the chat. It's going to be great. So join me tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but Friday night, I'll be in LA. And it looks like I'll be in LA for a couple days after that. So I don't know exactly what my schedule will involve, but, reach out if you're in the LA area. I've already talked to Dan, good friend of our community who's in LA. He's coming. I've talked to Craig Pasta Jardula from the Convo Couch, good friend of our community. He's coming. A couple other people have reached out. Maybe I don't need to broadcast all of their names, but there's going to be a good crowd of CPI friends, CPI allies, and CPI members coming to this event. And it's going to be a wild event, I must say. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later tonight. But if you're in the LA area, come join me Friday night for an event where I will be a guest speaker at LA Family Church, an event themed around peace in the Korean Peninsula. So that's the big announcement that we've got. Keep in mind that, our community here on this YouTube channel, we are the Center for Political Innovation, CPI. If you would like to join us and get involved in our efforts to build peace in the world and have a government of action that fights for working families, we would always love to have you as a member of the Center for Political Innovation. So that is our organization. We've hosted Scott Ritter at a number of our events, and I'm going to talk about that later tonight in light of what just happened today. And there's been some clarification. We're going to talk about all of that, but that's when we get started. So we're the Center for Political Innovation. You can join us on our website, $10 a month to be a member. We have meetups and conferences. We publish books. We have reading groups and study sessions, and we're always doing great stuff. So we'd love to have you as a member of CPI. So join the Center for Political Innovation. So as I said before, I'll give my opening remarks about today's news and other things. Then from there, we'll do the roll call. I'll call you all out as I see you. And then from there, I answer super chat questions for the remainder of the night. So if you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of our show, by all means, send a super chat. So the big news is that a great friend of the Center for Political Innovation, a friend is an understatement. Scott Ritter is our man. We love Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter got dragged off of an airplane today. He was scheduled to attend the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, and he went to the airport and he went onto the plane. And 2 Customs and Border Patrol agents took him from his seat on the plane, out of the plane, and confiscated his U.S. passport. They did not give him a reason as to why his passport was confiscated, but they took it away from him. Now, this is big. This is very, very, very big, because the U.S. government very rarely confiscates people's passports unless they have been charged with a crime or they are tax delinquent to the tune of $500,000. But aside from being $500,000 tax delinquent or being convicted of a crime or whatever, they generally don't have the ability to take your passport. And there's been Supreme Court rulings about this. During the 1950s, they tried to do this to various Communist Party members in particular. I believe they confiscated the passport of W.E.B. Du Bois, the great African-American scholar. He was not a communist, but he was invited to speak at an event in Europe about the oppression of African Americans, an event sponsored by the Soviet government in Paris, I believe. And the U.S. government confiscated his passport. And there were cases in the Supreme Court where the Supreme Court said, no, unless you're convicted of a crime, you have the freedom to travel. Now, Scott Ritter is an interesting case. Now, Scott Ritter, as you all know, he has been convicted of a crime, and the details of the conviction of the crime that he faced are ridiculous. Go and look at the details of the case. He was framed up in a really disgusting way. He was on an internet web forum chatting with someone who he believed to be an adult, and he was having a naughty internet conversation. God forbid. I don't know anyone who's ever done that. He had a naughty internet conversation with an undercover police officer who gave him multiple times, said that they were of age, and then one time said they weren't of age, and he's accused of asking them for a photo, and that's what they got him for. And it's just utterly ridiculous, right? And the trial in his case, it was because he's a former UN weapons inspector, because he was going around exposing that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They framed him up and they put him in prison and they made him a sex offender. So because Scott Ritter has been, imprisoned and framed up and all of that, because of that, Scott Ritter has to notify the U.S. government 21 days in advance before he leaves the country. And, that is the case. Now, they took his passport first when he went to prison. And then after he got out of prison, his lawyer had to file a petition with the court, and then they returned his passport. Right. And then after that, after they returned his passport, in order to comply with U.S. law, because he is a convicted, person, he has to file with the department, with the government, that he will be leaving the country 21 days prior to his departure. And he has to have a signed letter from a police officer. And he gets 3 copies of a signed letter from the police officer that he notified, one to carry with him when he travels, one to leave with his wife. I mean, it's wild. But for him to travel is a huge, big thing. So the U.S. government had every opportunity in the world to stop Scott Ritter from traveling, right? When he filed his 21 days, they could have called him up and said, no, we're nullifying your passport. They didn't do that. They had every opportunity to stop him, but they wanted to really stick it to him, right? They wanted to really embarrass and shame him and humiliate him. They wanted to make him afraid. They wanted to terrorize people, make them scared to go to Russia. They wanted it to get a lot of publicity and a lot of attention. And so they decided that they would wait for him to get on the plane, right? Keep in mind, I mean, you go through U.S. Customs when you leave the country. They could have stopped him at U.S. Customs. But no, they waited for him to be on the plane before they sent the officers onto the plane, took him off the plane, took his passport, and escorted him out of the airport. Now, it's very clear what this is. This is terrorism. It's an attempt to terrify people out of going to Russia, right? They wanted to do it in the most blatant, public, dramatic way they possibly could. They could have told him ahead of time they were planning, but they still have not given a reason for confiscating his passport. He is not charged with any crime that he's aware of. He is not tax delinquent, $500,000. So what could possibly be the reason that they disqualified his passport? Now, what's interesting is that there have been Supreme Court rulings about freedom to travel, but starting with the Trump administration, I will say, as much as Trump was very good on the Korea issue, the State Department under Donald Trump announced that anyone who goes to North Korea would have their passport deactivated. Now, that's not constitutional. The Supreme Court said you can't do that. So somebody needs to challenge it, but nobody has. And they made it illegal, a $25,000 fine and confiscation of your passport to go to North Korea. So no one's able to visit North Korea, right? And that started under Donald Trump, and Biden renewed it. And that is currently U.S. law around North Korea, and it's not constitutional. We need somebody with the American Civil Liberties Union and others to go to North Korea, get their passport deactivated, and then sue the American government. But so far, there's been no one who's been able to do that. It is not constitutional. So they're already threatening to deactivate or confiscate people's passports. They're already threatening to do that. They're already threatening to do such a thing, right? When they don't, that's not legal for them to do it. So they've already been threatening to illegally take people's passports. This is a case where they clearly have done it. And apparently they did this during the Bush administration. When they wanted Muslim Americans to talk to the FBI, they would confiscate their passports. I mean, I read, there's an article about this. Mother Jones Magazine did an article about this. I will link it in the chat. In order to induce Muslims to cooperate with the FBI, they would take their passports in exchange for them getting interviewed by the FBI. Now, that is very illegal, because not only is that, you can't take someone's passport, but on top of that, you cannot force someone to talk to law enforcement, right? You can force someone to talk to a grand jury, but you can't force someone to talk to law enforcement. But during the Bush administration, there was a Muslim American man from Bahrain, and they nullified his passport and confiscated his passport and said he could only get it back if he would sit down and do an interview with the FBI, right? Well, that is not legal, right? That is a violation of of the law. I mean, what's going on here? Is it possible that they're planning to charge Scott Ritter with a crime? I don't think so, because I think they would have already done that to prevent him from leaving the country. Is it possible that they are just trying to see if they can get away with this? I think that's probably the case, because Scott Ritter was planning to attend the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, which is a very important gathering that Russia puts on every year to talk about international trade and cooperation. And we know that the American government is trying to crush the Russian economy. That is what they're doing with sanctions, with banking, and all of that. And that Russia is setting up their own international bank transfer system. And that is something that is on everyone's mind. And the USA is furious about this, because one of the main ways the United States dominates the global economy, one of the main ways that they do it, is they control the international bank transfer system, the SWIFT system. And so Russia is saying, look, you're going to lock us out of the SWIFT system. We in the BRICS countries, Russia, India, China, Brazil, South Africa, we'll just invent our own new SWIFT system. And that scares the hell out of the United States, because that means not only are people not going to be intimidated by the SWIFT system, but there's going to be all kinds of transactions that take place between banks around the world where American bankers don't get to be the middleman. And that infuriates them. So they're very upset about this upcoming St. Petersburg Economic Forum. And we also know that, I mean, this is wild. So not only is Scott Ritter a good friend of CPI, but Scott Ritter was going to be speaking on a panel with another good friend of CPI, Tara Reid, the woman who was sexually assaulted by Joe Biden, the brilliant journalist and writer, frequent contributor to RT, former Senate staffer, Tara Reid, a dedicated anti-imperialist, a brave journalist, amazing person, amazing human being, right? And so in addition to, in addition to the fact that our friend Scott Ritter just had his passport confiscated, it appears that this was done to prevent him from going to an event where he's speaking with our other very, very good friend, Tara Reid. This is really wild. So I want to show you all Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter has been subjected to a lot of bullshit. He has been subjected to a lot of bullshit, right? This conviction, he never harmed anyone, right? He had a naughty conversation on the internet with an undercover police officer, right? And for that, they have labeled him a pedophile and all kinds of things. It's disgusting what they did to him. He didn't commit any crime. There was no victim. There was no victim. He had a naughty conversation with someone he believed to be an adult. And they turned that into a felony. And they smeared him unbelievably. And we were sponsors of the Rage Against the War Machine rally in Washington, D.C. last February. And cancel culture, hysterical cancel culture was directed at that march. Oh my God, there's going to be a sex offender. We saw that and we said, this is bullshit. This is just some bullshit. Right? Scott Ritter is a great man. He never harmed anybody. It's not a crime to have a naughty conversation on the internet. Certainly is not a crime to do that. So after the Rage Against the War Machine rally, because he was unable to speak, we had a reception for Scott Ritter at a hotel in Washington, D.C. And this is what happened. This was our great reception for Scott Ritter at the CPI at the Rage Against the War Machine after party. And I want to show you, this was a beautiful, beautiful moment. This is a moment where I've been very, very proud, very, very proud of the Center for Political Innovation.
Ideas are great, but the reason that the Center for Political Innovation exists is to put on events like this, to give a platform to ideas we don't widely hear in the United States, to educate people about anti-imperialism and socialism. And that is why it is really an honor tonight to bring forward our guest of honor, a real hero, someone who deserves to be heard from the heavens. Everyone should hear what this man has to say. Scott Ritter is here. Scott Ritter is here. We are proud that Scott Ritter is here. This is a hero. This is a hero right here. We love you, Scott. We love you. Go ahead and give us some words. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. To be honest, I thought I was just coming here to a reception to say hi to people, and speaking is, hopefully it's a bonus. Listening, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, Caleb. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I want to thank everybody here for coming out. I know some people traveled a long way to come to this rally, and great journeys begin one step at a time, and we're on a great journey, and today was the first step. And the people that didn't come here, they're one step behind us. Yeah. And when you take the next step, they're two steps behind us. So you guys are the winners, and they got issues, and I applaud you. So again, thanks for coming out. Now, they say some of the best journeys, you bring about some of the most interesting travel companions. And I have to say right now, listening to your talk and everything, you guys are some interesting traveling companions. Yeah, because I couldn't think of any more interesting traveling companions than you for somebody like me. When I grew up, my father was a career Air Force officer, and I call myself a child of the Cold War. And back then, terms like kill a commie for mommy were real. Better dead than red was real. It was part of my life, 24/7, because that's the life we lived. We were on the front lines of the Cold War. Across the frontier was the Soviet enemy, and we were ready to go to war. Not just any war, ladies and gentlemen, a war that would bring about the end of all mankind, because that war would include nuclear weapons. That was the harsh reality of my youth. And sadly, I was ready and willing to go on the same journey that my father did. I enlisted in the Army out of high school. I ended up getting a commission in the United States Marine Corps. And my focus of studies in college was Russian area studies. Why? To know your enemy. Why? To kill my enemy. I'm just being straight up honest with you. I joined the Marine Corps to kill commies. I joined the Marine Corps to kill Soviets. That's all I wanted to do, because I believed that was the mission given to me by my country, by my heritage, by my legacy, to defend America, freedom, our way of life against an evil scourge that I didn't understand, but I feared. So I was willing to kill them. And I did a hell of a job preparing for this operation. 2.5 years in 29 Palms, California, with a field artillery battalion whose job was to put steel on target. And I trained hard, and we were ready. If the balloon went up, we would have acquitted ourselves well. Thank goodness the balloon didn't go up. Instead, they sent me on a different journey. They sent me to the Soviet Union. A guy who was training to kill Soviets suddenly was sent to the Soviet Union not to kill them, but to cooperate with them. On what? Eliminating the most dangerous weapons in the world. In December of 1987, Ronald Reagan sat down with Mikhail Gorbachev and signed the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. Intermediate nuclear forces are basically missiles with nuclear warheads of a given range. In this case, the range, 500 to 5,000 kilometers, I believe, could be miles, but I think it's kilometers, meant that if the weapon was stationed in West Germany, it could strike Moscow 5 minutes after launch. Why is that important? Well, because that's the amount of time then the Soviets have to decide what to do. The second the weapon is detected, 5 minutes later, if it's the real deal, Moscow disappears. Now, normally speaking, with intercontinental ballistic missiles, you have 30 to 40 minutes. Now, why is this important? Because in the past, the treaty was signed in 1987. In 1983, there were several instances where there were false alarms. And fortunately, the time that was saved by that 30 to 40 minute window allowed people to make the right decision to assume that this wasn't a real attack, but a false alarm, and they didn't launch the missiles. But with the new intermediate range missiles, if the alarm went off, you didn't have 30 to 40 minutes, you had 5 minutes, which means fire now, boom, and we're all dead. We're all dead. Now, I don't like to say this too often, and I appreciate people shaking my hand coming up here. Don't shake my hand for anything I am doing today or tomorrow. Shake my hand for what I did in 1988, 1989, 1990. Want to know why? Because if it wasn't for people like me on the American side and my Soviet counterparts, none of us would be here today.
You're an American hero.
Because without the treaty, there would have been a mistake.
Scott Ritter is a great American hero. And he is somebody who, if there's anybody who's qualified to talk about war and militarism and weapons and nukes and how they work, it's him, right? This is a military genius, a former UN weapons inspector, a very, very highly qualified guy who has seen the inside of the Pentagon apparatus. He's seen the inside of Russia and the inside of the United States and the inside of Iraq and many countries. And he understands what's happening in the world. He understands that this war in Russia, this war in Ukraine was started by U.S. imperialism. He understands that what Israel is doing on, to the Palestinians is unconscionable, it's genocidal, and it must be opposed. Scott Ritter is amazing in so many different ways. So many different ways. Scott Ritter is utterly amazing. And to be from where he's from, to be somebody who was part of the U.S. war machine, somebody who has great love for his country. He is absolutely an American patriot, just like we are in the Center for Political Innovation. He loves his country, but he sees that we are committed to war and militarism and empire to make profits for huge corporations working in the interest of the American people. Scott is a dynamic, amazing person. And what they are doing to Scott Ritter, the fact that they would confiscate his passport to keep him from going to Russia to attend an economic forum about bringing the world together with trade, that's outrageous. That is utterly outrageous. Utterly outrageous what they did to Scott Ritter today. Now, there's some confusion. I know people are looking at the title of the stream. There's some confusion, I guess. Now, it was widely reported that Judge Napolitano was on the plane and escorted out as well. Now, this Judge Napolitano is now saying he was not on the plane, and he's now saying that his trip was canceled, and he won't say why. This is what Judge Napolitano has said about why his trip was canceled. And I honestly don't know what to make of this. I'm not going to pretend I understand this. I am just going to show this to you. This is what Judge Napolitano is saying about why he is not at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. Right. This is Judge Napolitano. This is what he said. So take it for what you will.
Way to St. Petersburg. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here. In the U.S., my trip was canceled due to events in Russia that are not national or major diplomatic events, but events that involve this trip. So I'm happy that the cancellation occurred before I left, and I'm happier still that you and I are together this morning. Thank you for coming on with such short notice at the last minute like this.
So I don't know what that means. Right. But he has tweeted out that he was not on the plane when this happened and that he supports Scott's right to travel. I don't know what that means. I do know it was widely reported that Judge Napolitano was on the plane. So I have absolutely no clue what is going on. I don't want to be spreading any incorrect information. So I will probably clarify that in the description after this stream, just so there's no confusion about it, right? I don't want to be spreading fake news, right? I don't want to be, but there's confusion, right? There's mixed reports. It was widely reported that Judge Napolitano was on the plane, and then he says he was not, and now he's saying his trip was canceled under mysterious circumstances that he can't get into or something. So I have no idea what's going on. But Judge Napolitano, I remember when he was just a regular Republican, and now he is an anti-war voice, good friend of Scott Ritter. We would invite Judge Napolitano to a CPI conference the way he talks now, right? And he spoke at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. He's become a very important anti-war voice. And so, we look up to Judge Napolitano as well, right? We look up to him, and in a lot of ways, there you go. There you go. Hold on. I'm just getting different messages here. Hold on. But anyhow, so this is the situation, and we see what's happening here, right? Let's go down the line. The People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, the African People's Socialist Party, had their homes raided by the FBI. Did you notice that? That happened. They had their homes raided by the FBI. Now Scott Ritter has had his passport taken away from him. And Tara Reade has been forced to flee the country. Meanwhile, when we were in Russia, the Center for Political Innovation, two of our members, myself and Noah, our member from Boston, great comrade, Korean American, postal worker, longtime dedicated anti-imperialist, one of our most dedicated members, I must say. We got to go to a special reception with President Vladimir Putin, right? Meanwhile, I recently, in September, I interviewed the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the one who just died, Ibrahim Riazi. And I got to tell you, I see what happened to Scott. It makes me angry. It makes me angry that they're doing this. And it makes me angry that Tara Reade has had to flee the country. And it makes me angry that the Uhuru movement is indicted and facing 15 years in prison. And it makes me angry, all of this. But what makes me angrier, and I will just be real with all of you since you're watching this, is that there are so many people who claim to be against U.S. wars and claim to be against U.S. military interventions around the world and claim to be, some of them on the side of Russia and some of them on the side of Iran, who cannot wrap their heads around the fact that all of these different people are being targeted for their important work. And there are so many people, because what they don't understand is all of these people, Scott, the Uhuru movement, Tara, all of them, in order to justify what they do to them, they launch a social media smear campaign. And you've seen it today with Scott. As it was reported what happened to him, every single post, there's someone going and saying something negative about him. Right. And that's supposed to make it OK. Right. That he's got this, this frame up conviction in his past. Well, that's U.S. law still says he's allowed to travel. He gave the 21-day notice, freedom to travel. But there's always some of these people who say this. Right. And with the Uhuru movement. Right. And for those of you who don't know about the Uhuru case, right, it's a very important case right now. This is a Black revolutionary organization. Tucker Carlson supports them and has featured them on his program. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Uhuru case, I'm gonna put the video about the Uhuru movement on here because it's just so important. This is the case you should really know about.
After the rioting was done, U.S. media kind of forgot about those communities. Well, Uhuru, they went out there because they saw Black and brown people like themselves that were out there protesting and rioting, and they stayed there. And they've been there since 2014, providing services in the community, giving these young people in the community something constructive to do, not just go out and break shit to raise awareness about the conditions they're in, but ways to actually feed people and serve the community. And they've been there in St. Louis since 2014 doing constructive work. They have really escalated these programs. They have a farmer's market They provide classes and services to pregnant mothers, and in particular in St. Louis, Missouri, and in St. Petersburg, Florida. They're trying to undo the damage that the U.S. Department of Justice and the state police and the local police and all the forces have been doing in communities like Ferguson, Missouri. And at the same time that they've done this community work, the African People's Socialist Party has also taken a firm anti-imperialist stance. They support China. They support Russia. They support Cuba. They support Iran. And when the United States started piling weapons into Kiev, they defended Russia's right to intervene.
This defensive war in Ukraine that Russia is actually waging against world colonial powers, not Ukraine as a single entity, but the U.S. and all colonial powers who have an interest in colonially dominating African people right here in this country and around the world and extracting resources from the majority of peoples on the planet. That system, this current system, is in severe crisis, and they cannot rule in the same old way.
Because of that, their homes were raided. Then months later, the federal government came out with an indictment, and it's charging them with being Russian agents. And it's trying to allege that the election campaign that they ran in St. Petersburg, Florida, was somehow interference in the U.S. electoral process.
4 activists associated with the People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and the African People's Socialist Party have been indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice. The indictment from the U.S. Department of Justice accuses them of spreading Russian propaganda and cites simply some web conferences that they had, some Zoom meetings, some emails they sent out, as well as the fact that they have run routine election campaigns. Is this of concern to the Secretary General as an attack on human rights, freedom of assembly, etc.?
I frankly was not aware of the case before you mentioned it. Let me look into it and I will get back to you.
What's going on in Africa is directly connected to what's going on here. What's going on in Ukraine is connected to what's going on in Harlem. You know what I'm saying? It's an international global economy that's all connected.
Because they go to conferences in Russia, this constitutes Russian meddling in the elections. The whole thing is ridiculous. It's completely, utterly ridiculous. They've been running these campaigns for years, since before I was born. Back in the 1970s, they were running people for office. Their platform of reparations, I mean, Marianne Williamson, she's a major Democrat candidate. She also says she believes in reparations. I mean, it's not a unique message that they have in that sense, but they have been targeted because they're doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, you know, at all of our meetings, we have a picture of Fred Hampton up on the stage because Fred Hampton, he built a free breakfast program. He organized what he called a rainbow coalition, uniting low-income people, white, black, brown, Arab, Latino, into one organization, you know, trying to build up community empowerment, trying to do community service projects while teaching Marxism and socialism. You know, we look at Fred Hampton as a great example of the American revolutionary tradition. And, you know, the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement, you know, they don't like that we wave the American flag. They don't like that we consider ourselves patriotic. They have their own kind of unique analysis. They talk about what they call the colonial mode of production. That's not traditional Marxist thinking. And we don't agree with them on a number of issues. But it doesn't matter. We support them.
We all have to stand up and oppose the ideology of division and support an ideology of unity based upon our material interests, you know what I'm saying, to work together.
People who can't understand that, people who can't get past, you know, this or that, like, we got to put aside our differences and say that if they come for them, they come for all of us. If they go after them, they got to deal with all of us. That needs to be the attitude among anti-imperialists.
And, you know, the reason I showed you all that video is because, you know, Scott Ritter, it's a similar situation in that whenever you bring up the Uhuru case, a group of Black revolutionary activists who are running a farmer's market and classes for pregnant mothers in their community, whenever you bring them up, all these people who claim to be anti-war, claim to be anti-imperialist go, oh, isn't that a cult? I heard it was a cult. I heard something on the internet. And they just bring up a whole bunch of irrelevant shit. They're not charged with being a cult. They're not charged with being weird. They're charged for being friendly to Russia. They are trying to put them in jail because they went to conferences in Russia. They're saying that their anti-war activism is acting as a Russian agent. That's what they're calling it. And based on that, they are trying to throw them in jail. And everybody who has any sense of civil liberties needs to be speaking up for them. Just like they should be speaking up for Scott Ritter right now, who had his passport taken away. I want to show you some more great videos because we love Scott Ritter. We absolutely love Scott Ritter. I want to show you, this was his most recent talk at a CPI event. It was really tremendous. let me just, this is really, really great. I'm going to, David Rovick's our good friend, the musician, who's also been widely smeared,
in Gaza, but also
us, Elizabeth, Caleb, all of CPI. I have learned that you are not the Communist Party International. Or India. But, again, here I am in a situation where I liken it to once more into the breach. Because we are not alike in terms of our approaches towards society. We come from different backgrounds. Let me just put it that way. And yet here I am, speaking with you again. Why? Because of what you said. Because we are Americans. That's what unites us. That's what brings us together. Now, I'm a little upset with you because you took the theme of my speech. Something about I'm mad as shit. We're not gonna let this shit happen anymore. I thought long and hard about this speech. Now you've blown it, so I've got to make it up as I go along. But that's okay. No, in all seriousness, this is supposed to be about anti-war, an anti-war movement. I am not.
This is where it gets great. This is where it gets great.
Anti-war. I just want to make that point as loud and clear as I can. I'm not pro-war. I don't support war. I'm against war. But if you want to wage war, there ain't nobody better at it than me. Okay? I know how to wage war. That's why I hate war. I despise war. But if you want to fight, let's fight. And the reason why I bring this up is we are confronted with some problems today. For instance, let's take Russia and Ukraine. It's a war I think we can all agree we want to end. No, we don't want it to end. Because if it ends today, right now, there is no justice. There is no justice for the children of Donbass. There's no justice for the Russians who have been oppressed by the fascist regime in Kiev. No, there needs to be a war. This thing has to be settled. Once you cross the threshold, once you cross the line of departure, then you must close with and destroy the enemy through firepower maneuver. Now, that's difficult for an anti-war movement to understand. But Russia didn't start this war. What we know is that Russia did everything possible to prevent this war. Everything possible. And the reason why I'm yelling is because I'm mad. I'm mad at my country for not allowing the opportunities for peace to manifest themselves. Hundreds of thousands of people would be alive today had we simply taken the hand that was reached out in the cause of peace. But we rejected it. We rejected it. We lied while rejecting it. We claimed to be for peace, but we were never for peace. We were always for war. And so war has come to us. And through war, tragically, this process will be solved. Now, people say, Scott, you're an American. Yes, I am. Damn proud to be an American. You attack my country, I will kill you or die trying. So don't attack America. But when we're talking about Russia and Ukraine, we're not talking about somebody attacking America. We're talking about America facilitating the attack on another country. America manipulating events. America overthrowing a constitutionally elected government in Ukraine. America using an ostensible peace process as a vehicle to arm, train, and equip a military force for the sole purpose of killing Russians. We bragged about it. There's a slide that the U.S. Army put out about the training facilities in Western Ukraine. We train a battalion, they said, every 55 days, a battalion of Ukrainians to NATO standards, every 55 days here on the map, and then an arrow so they can go here and kill Russians. Wow. At least we were honest for the first time in our lives, because that's what Minsk was about. The Minsk Accords were supposed to be a ceasefire agreement that could lead to peace. Peace that would have preserved the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Preserved it. Would have given Ukraine security guarantees, but not through NATO, because NATO is not about security. NATO is about the opposite of security. NATO is an extension of imperialist American objectives using a foreign flag as cover. That's all it's about. And yet we pretended it was about peace. And we allowed Angela Merkel to front for us. We allowed Francois Hollande to front for us. We allowed Ukrainian presidents to front for us. But what were they fronting for? They admitted today, a sham. It wasn't about peace, it was about buying time so that NATO could train this Ukrainian army to kill Russians. And Russia said, hell no. Just like we did. Study our history. The British taxation without representation, the tyranny of the crown, and we said, hell no. And we stood up and we fought a revolution to free ourselves. What would the anti-war movement have done in 1775? Fold? Hold a demonstration? No, you had to stand with the Minutemen at Concord and Lexington and say, you shall not pass. That's right. And so the Russians have said the same thing. We will not allow this fascist tyranny. It's not just Ukraine, it's a collective West using the cause of fascism. My God, my uncle went across the beach at Normandy in 1944 to fight the Nazis. I've told this story before, where he finally made it to, they fought through France. It was sort of a walk in the park. And he got to a field in Belgium, and the 88s opened up. And in a matter of seconds, 250 of his colleagues, men that he had trained with, men he knew, were dead on the ground. And when he visited us, my parents lived in Germany, we visited us, we took him to the cemetery where these men were buried. And he broke down and he cried like a baby because of the sacrifice, the loss that was put into the cause of defeating fascism, Nazi Germany. Americans died for that cause. 27 million Soviets died for that cause. British died for that cause. French died for that cause. And yet today we are promoting the very cause that these people died and sacrificed their lives for. Why? Why? It's not about freedom. It's not about liberty. It's about imperialism. It's about the very thing that America struggled to free ourselves from so many years ago. We're now seeking to impose it on the rest of the world. We stopped being the good guys and we have become the bad guys.
Yep. That's right.
This is bullshit. I want to use your line again. We're not going to put up with this shit anymore.
We're not going to put up with this shit anymore.
But how do we solve this problem? That's the problem. That's where we're at. And I thank you for bringing music into this because I don't know, there's people out there that say that they listen to me and they follow me. I've been on a couple of shows, a guy named Malcolm Byrne. He does a wonderful radio show out of Radio Kingston. And we have a couple hours worth of conversation, but we interspace it with music. And music is a very important part of lives. I mean, music allows people to express themselves. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been around for 62 years. And so when I look back on my life, it's usually in the form of a soundtrack. I mean, I pick a moment in my life and I'm like, oh yeah, that Bruce Springsteen song was pretty cool back then. Or yeah, Boz Scaggs. I know I'm giving my age away, but the Eagles, but the Bee Gees. But the point is, music is a big thing. So as I was flying over and trying to think, what am I going to say here? A song came to mind. And it's a Bruce Springsteen song. But, you know, the lyrics, I think, are pretty telling. Near the end of the song, the singer talks about a guy, he says, and Tom said, the Tom I'll get to in a minute. Ma, wherever there's a cop beating a guy, wherever a hungry newborn baby cries. I tear up because 5,000 kids getting killed in Gaza right now. And more to die because it's never going to end. Shameful. It's just, if you don't cry about that, you're not human. Wherever a hungry newborn baby cries, where there's a fight against the blood and hatred in the air, look at me, Ma, and I'll be there. I'm here with you guys because this is what it's about. This isn't about ideology or, you know, this is about people coming together. The song is about Tom Joad, a character in John Steinbeck's wonderful book, The Grapes of Wrath. And the thing about Tom Joad is that there's a transformation that takes place through his telling the story in the Great Depression, where he stops being this self-centered, seize the day kind of guy, and instead he becomes a fighter for the people, a fighter for the cause. And that's what we have to become. The hell with the peace movement. And I don't mean that bad, but we have to be fighters. Okay, we can't be pacifists anymore. It's time to struggle. And I'm not talking about violence. I am not talking about violence. Violence is what the Russians do and the Ukrainians do. That's their fight, not our fight. Yeah. Unfortunately, the United States promoted conflict. Live by the sword, you shall perish by the sword. And those whom we sent to war are now paying the ultimate price. And it is tragic, but once this process of cleansing by fire has started, it can't stop until it's finished. So let the Russians finish the job. Because we know the Russians' intent is pure. They didn't want this war. They didn't ask for this war, but war was thrust upon them. And therefore, through war, they shall finish their job. Our job is to be prepared when the fighting stops. How do we ensure that the sacrifice made in the cause of promoting anti-fascism isn't squandered? That we get the Russians on a path towards peace, not just with the Ukrainians, but with the Europeans, with the Americans. That's our responsibility as Americans, to get the United States positioned so that when the fighting stops, we can ensure that it never happens again. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an anti-war movement. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a peace movement. And I've been struggling for this. I've been struggling this for some time. I've been trying to say, well, what can I do? And my whole thing has been to attack Russophobia, the ignorance that comes from the fear of all things Russian. And you're afraid of that which you don't know, that which you don't understand. And so what I've been trying to do is travel to Russia, get some experiences from Russia, package those experiences, and get it out to the American people. I call the process waging peace, as opposed to waging war. I guess in a way that's a anti-war movement, that's a pro-peace movement. So I'm trying to contribute as I can. And I was making progress until October 7th. On October 7th, the world changed yet again. Another war was thrust upon us. And this is a hard one, because as much as we have problems identifying with Russia, in the United States, we don't know how to articulate responsibly about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You see, and I'm going to speak some hard truths here. We, America, have been bought out, sold out to this power called Zionism. We're not allowed to say it, you see. The mere fact that I said this, according to the United States Congress, has made me anti-Semitic. And I always tell people that's the last thing in the world I am. I'm not racist. I'm not anti any religion. I'm not anti any people. Zionism is not a religion. It is not a people. It is an ideology of hate, an ideology of intolerance, an ideology that says that one group of people are inherently superior to all others, especially those who populate the land that the Zionists want to occupy themselves. Zionism is an evil, and it's manifested itself today in the form of an Israeli state that defines itself by this very ideology. Now, I have come to this issue late in life. I'm a disarmament guy. I'm a Russia guy. I'm not an Israeli-Palestinian guy. I spent a lot of time in Israel in the 90s working with the Israeli government trying to stop weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and I learned to love Israel at that time. But the Israel that I fell in love with was the Israel of Yitzhak Rabin, the Israel of a prime minister who recognized that the path Israel was on was incompatible to long-term peace and prosperity, and that there had to be a way of relating with the Palestinians that gave them a state, a two-state solution, something that said, this is yours, this is ours, we will be equals upon this. It wasn't perfect. I know people out there will point to Oslo I and Oslo II and say, it wasn't perfect. No, it wasn't. It's a hell of a lot better than what we got going on right now. At least you had an Israeli prime minister who said, I believe in peace. He didn't just say, I believe in peace. He said, I am willing to die for peace. Imagine that. An Israeli leader who said, I am willing to die for peace. I am willing to die for peace with the Palestinians. He said that the day before he was assassinated on November, I believe, 4th or 5th of 1995. 4th. Who killed him? A Palestinian? A member of Hamas? No. A right-wing Orthodox Jew who took his orders to assassinate from a rabbi who quoted not the Torah but the Talmud and said that Yitzhak Rabin had somehow turned his back on the Jewish faith and therefore he must be killed. And so they killed him. They killed him. And Israel has never been the same because who took over from Yitzhak Rabin was Benjamin Netanyahu. And Benjamin Netanyahu empowered this poisonous ideology to become what Israel is today. Not a nation that's seeking peace, but a nation that only exists for war against the Palestinian people. The Israeli state is an evil state. The Israeli state today is a tyrannical state. It's a state that must be opposed violently because they chose war. It wasn't the Palestinian people that chose war. Israel chose war. Just like it wasn't the Minutemen at Concord and Lexington that said, we choose war. It was thrust upon them by the tyranny of the British Crown. And so when you take a look at October 7th and what happened on October 7th, don't believe that history began that day. It didn't. October 7th was the manifestation of 7+ decades of apartheid-driven hate between the Israelis and the Palestinians that manifested itself violently throughout that time period. Gaza was not a land where Palestinians lived in peace. It was an open-air concentration camp. And if you ask yourself, if you lived in that, if you were an inmate in this concentration camp, a prisoner, what would you do to liberate yourself? What would you do to free yourself? Hold another demonstration? Hold a rally. That'll do it. The Israelis will definitely listen to the rally. No, you do what all people who yearn to be free do. You stand up and you fight for yourselves. You know, Pierce Morgan, you're allowed to boo and hiss at this point, has made a reputation lately by having people on his show, and they'll say, but will you condemn Hamas? That's his question. Will you condemn Hamas? Hey, Pierce, invite me. I'll give you the answer. Hell no. I don't condemn Hamas. I support Hamas. Why? Because Hamas stands for the freedom of the Palestinian people. And the Palestinian people have every right to fight for their freedom, to struggle for their freedom, just like Americans did back in the day. Right. They are the modern day incarnation of the Minutemen at Lexington and Concord. They speak a different language, they support a different cause, but the freedoms they seek are the same. Right. And these are freedoms that can't be granted by a rally or a gathering. They can only be given by those who are willing to sacrifice in that cause. And the Palestinians today are struggling. They are sacrificing for this cause. We as a peace movement, it's not our war. It's not. They have to earn this. And my God, they are earning it. That's right. The sacrifices that they are making, the courage they are showing in the face of insurmountable odds. What is our role here? To support them, yes. But we have to position ourselves so that when the fighting finally ends, and it will end, ladies and gentlemen, and Hamas will not be defeated. When it ends, we are prepared to find a path towards peace. That America stops being the nation that promotes war and starts being the nation that promotes peace. That is the role of an American anti-war movement today. Oh, yeah!
Wow. Yes, we love Scott Ritter. We absolutely love Scott Ritter. And I guess I'm on here tonight to just honor and support Scott Ritter. Honor and support, Judge Napolitano, even though we don't exactly know the circumstances of what happened, but he wasn't able to go to St. Petersburg to the Economic Forum. We know that. We're here to honor and support Scott Ritter. But what I'm here to get you to understand, right, is that, you know, Scott Ritter is doing what he's doing as a great anti-imperialist. It's on the CPI YouTube channel. You can find it. Go to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube. You can find that speech on there. That there's always people who claim to agree with what Scott's doing, but when they start the smears and the lies against Scott, they suddenly say, oh, and they find a way to go along with it, right? And this is what we've got to root out. And the same thing happens to the Uhuru movement. And that's why I want to tell you a little story. And this story is really, really important. This story is really, really important because I want you to hear about this. So I told you about how Scott Ritter, how they barred him from the Rage Against the War Machine rally. And let me just show you the entrance at the CPI event when they barred him from the Rage Against the War Machine rally because of some stupid cancel culture. What did we do? We had a reception for him, and we gave him a hero's welcome. Right? This is
honest. I thought I was
imperialism and social. Proud that Scott, who deserves to be heard from the heavens. Everyone should hear what this man has to say. Scott Ritter is here. Scott Ritter is here. We are proud that Scott Ritter is here. This is a hero. This is a hero right here. We love you, Scott. We love you. Go ahead and give us some words. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
When we saw that Scott Ritter was being smeared and canceled by the imperialists and blocked out of a very important anti-war rally, we spoke up and we said we have to stand with him. And I want to show you something that happened a few months before that. About 6 months before that, there was a raid on the home of the African People's Socialist Party, of the Uhuru movement. They had their homes raided by the FBI. And we were having a conference in Chicago, which was not very far from St. Louis, Missouri, where they got raided. And so we had no choice. And this is what we did at our conference in Chicago that we had, right? And this was a great conference that we did. We saw that a group of Black activists had their homes raided, and they had been accused of being Russian agents. And so this is what we did. And as we put forward this vision of rebuilding America with popular power, breaking out of their globalist financial system, we must oppose all political repression. The deep state is moving in on too many people right now, threatening their rights. And that is why we absolutely condemn the horrendous FBI raids carried out against the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru House, and Chairman Omala. Here today to show that we are not afraid, we are not intimidated, and that we offer nothing but unequivocal full support and solidarity to them while they're under attack. Please stand up, comrades. Come on the stage, please. And civil rights activists as agents of Russia is one of the dirtiest tricks of the U.S. deep state. They called Martin Luther King Jr. a Soviet agent. They called the Nation of Islam foreign agents. And we are here today to say that Black people have the right to organize, fight for their rights however they choose, and that the U.S. government has no right to call them Russian agents or repress them in any way. The FBI raids must now stop. Must stop immediately now. Stop the raids. We want to turn the podium, the microphone over to our guests. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Columbai Antoinette, and how I always start any speech that I ever do is with a chant. So I want to teach you, or maybe you already know it, join in, because this is just the meditation of my heart, even coming here, and why it would never be any kind of retreat. We will never surrender. We will never compromise. We will continue to move forward and build. Fist up! Fist up! Fist up! Fist up! Fist up! This is what fight back look like. So I just really want to start off by saying I really want to appreciate the organizers that put on this event, no matter what road you have took, small, big, or large, for making this gathering happen and reaching out to the Uhuru movement and seeing this unjust raid is your fight. That they came after us today, but who's next? Because this is an attack against the whole Black community. We see this not just an attack against Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Akile Anai, Deputy Chair Ona Zane Yeshitela, Chairwoman Penny Hess, Jesse Knoll, and all of our comrades that were directly attacked from this raid. But this is an attack against all of us. That's how we see it. So I say, I want to slow down because I have been traveling here from St. Louis, Missouri. And when Chairman told me, I'm sending you to Chicago and speak to a group of people, I went to y'all website. I said, Chairman, you sure me? You sure you want to send me? And the reason why I didn't have the confidence at first to come, because to be truthful, I am part of the peasant. I'm a girl from Walnut Park, and I know most of you might not know what Walnut Park, but it has been a neighborhood in St. Louis, Missouri that has been the #1 murder capital for several decades now. And so where I come from, nothing good's come from. They don't stand in groups or understand anything that happens internationally or anything like that. So I'm going to apologize for every word that I attempt to say that I say wrong. I hope you catch my drift, okay? But I am a glaring example of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the work of the African People's Socialist Party in the dedication of bringing the African working class into political life. That we understand that the attack on the African community, the Black community, goes long before. That it has not been a time that Black people haven't been struggling against this horrific genocide system that has attacked Africa over 600 years ago. That ever since 600 years ago, that it's never been a generation that haven't struggled for our liberation.
So that was just days after the raid on the homes of the Uhuru movement. Just days after that. And they went ahead after they raided their homes. They held Chairman Omali at gunpoint, flew drones into his house. Now they've charged them. They are facing an indictment. Their trial begins on September 3rd in Florida. They've charged them with allegedly being Russian agents. It's utterly, utterly horrendous. But in addition to that, at that conference, we also had yet another very, very important special guest that spoke. And I will put their video on the screen as well. And this was a good friend of mine. We've become good friends since then. I mean, this was the first time we met her in person. So next we have a good friend of mine, Paul Shepard, who's going to give us a musical performance. The Politics of Survival. She's the author of Left Out When the Truth Doesn't Fit In. She writes op-eds for RT as a contributor, and she's also an actress, and she's here speaking today. She has been unapologetically speaking up about what happened to her at the hands of our Commander-in-Chief, Joe Biden, and she has refused to back down from telling the truth despite a huge internet smear campaign, relentless attacks on her character. I mean, she was telling me what she's faced, and it is utterly horrendous. I mean, if you look into the details, how viciously they have gone after her and tried to silence her. But in addition to that, she is an anti-imperialist, and she is a critic of social media censorship. So we are nothing but honored to have Tara Reid here with us today. I'm really proud to call her my friend. This is Tara Reid. Ladies and gentlemen.
we stand in solidarity with all the people being oppressed right now, and it's many of us in this room. So you know me as Tara Reid. You knew I came forward about my experience working as a Senate aide for Joe Biden. I was sexually harassed and sexually assaulted by him in 1993. I went through protocol. I reported it. I didn't go to the press at that time. That report is somewhere buried in a sealed file in the University of Delaware, and even though people have tried to get it out, there has been quite a bit of effort to seal his files. So the files are sealed, and even the Delaware State Supreme Court said it wasn't in the public interest to release them. I say, release the files. Release the files. Because it's not just about me. Those files include other people that were harmed. They include his conversations with foreign leaders. They include some of the things that are happening now. And believe me, I think there's some stories in 40 years to tell there. So I think it is in the public interest to release those files. So Chicago is really special to me. And the song that you just heard, I heard that song because it turns out I was born in Monterey, California, but my parents moved to Wisconsin. I lived on a small farm. My father owned a business, and then later they divorced when I was 13. My mother was a political activist. My great-grandmother was a communist. She followed Jack Reed and the philosophies. My mother joined the progressive labor movement and the Committee Against Racism. She fought for racism against racism all her life. She marched and took me with her as a small child to Skokie, Illinois, when the Nazis were being allowed to march on a street that had Holocaust survivors. And this was very traumatizing to the community at that time, obviously, to have the Nazis. Now, a lot of movements came out, including Jesse Jackson, Committee Against Racism nationally, a bunch of solidarity, and there was the Chicago Police. My memory as a child is the Chicago Police, which to me, now as an adult, looking back, it looks like Darth Vader. That's what they look like. They were in full, and they weren't protecting us. Guess who they were protecting? The Nazis, right. My mother exposed me to a different way of thinking. I learned early on about American imperialism. I learned what we were doing in Afghanistan. I learned what we were doing in Vietnam. I learned what we were doing in Iraq and Iran, in Central America and South America, with covert and overt operations oppressing and not respecting sovereign nations, but rather trying to further the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower warned about this years ago. It's been warned many times, and now here we are in 2022, and now they have more sophisticated means, right, with technology to carry out their money laundering, actions. And I want to take you forward to right now. I decided, because when I came forward, I want you to know this, I lost everything. When I came forward about the truth about what Joe Biden did to me, I lost my housing, I lost my job, I lost my reputation, my daughter was threatened, my technology was all hacked, I was threatened with prison. They accused me of lying about my education, which I did not, and threatened me with 25 years in prison for perjury. I had to hire attorneys when I didn't have the money to do so, and I managed to have it looked at, and of course, the DA backed down and never investigated. And all of this was done in a campaign to smear me, and it's being done to other people, and it's not, what they want to do is what is.
So I wanted you all to see that, and I guess I'll show you how her speech ended, because we actually gave her an award. I'll show you that. We gave her an award.
We have here, before you go
go down, before you sit down, I want to present to you the International Solidarity and Truth Award. This is the Center for Political Innovations Award that we are giving to Tara Reid for actions in defense of international truth and solidarity in the pursuit of peace and justice. So this is for you.
We believe Tara! 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 We believe Tara!
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I feel warmth and connection with community, and it reminds me of when I was a child with my mom with the Progressive Labor Party and the Committee Against Racism. I love the unity, and I am with you. I wanted to dedicate this to the Uhuru movement. I want to dedicate this to them. I want to dedicate this to the investigative reporters right now in Donbass that are facing Patrick Lancaster, Ava Bartlett, right? Alina Lip, Wyatt Reed. They're putting their lives and their livelihoods on the line to tell the truth. So while I'm here safe in this building with you, right now they're running from bombs and trying to get us the truth, and we've got to keep lifting them up. So thank you and solidarity.
Yeah, so that conference that we had in Chicago, right? I mean, CPI, Center for Political Conferences, Innovation Conferences are amazing. We see Scott Ritter getting shut out. We invite Scott Ritter. We see the Uhuru movement get raided by the FBI. We invite the Uhuru movement. And the Uhuru movement has specifically thanked us for all the work that we have done to support them. And in particular, our member, John McCarthy has done so much to support them. But other members of our group, I mean, Chairman O'Malley has come on this YouTube channel before to do interviews. He made a special video message for our conference in December. We had them speak at our event in July. The Uhuru movement always sends somebody because they understand how we support them and how important it is. I want to tell you, though, what happened before that conference, right? And I some of you may know this. I've talked about it on this channel here before, but it's really important because that conference that we did in Chicago, that was the conference where the Uhuru movement got a platform just days after they were raided by the FBI. That was the conference where Tara Reid was presented with an award, and Tara Reid, found out and met the Uhuru movement and later got Tucker Carlson to cover their case, etc. And this is our organization that has been the best friends and supporters to Scott Ritter. Before that conference happened, a former CPI member, who didn't want us to support the Uhuru movement, who insisted that the Uhuru movement was a cult and so we shouldn't support them. He called me on the phone, or I actually called him. I heard, some of what was going on, and I called him on the phone. And my first question to him when I heard what was in the works is I said, have I hurt you in some way? Have I hurt you? And he said, no, you haven't hurt me. And I said, you came to our event that we just had in Kansas. Did you have a good time? He said, oh yeah, I had a great time. And I said to him, so what's going on here? Right? Because I knew that he and a couple other people were planning to publish all kinds of nasty stuff about me on the internet. And I said, what's going on? And he wouldn't give me a straight answer. And I said, look, you know that some of the stuff I'm hearing is not true. And he said, well, let's get specific. And I said, I could tell he was recording the phone call, so I wasn't going to do that. And I said to him, well, why are you doing this? He said, and then he said to me, and this is absolutely true. And if he's got a recording of the call, I bet it's on the recording of the call. He said to me, quote, you're going to have to cancel the conference, right? And I said, no, we're not going to cancel the conference. And then he said it again in the most creepy voice ever. You're going to have to cancel the conference. You're going to have to cancel that conference. I said, I'm not canceling that conference. Not going to do it. I hung up the phone. Now, what was going on there, right? A group of black revolutionaries gets raided by the FBI. Tara Reade is exposing Joe Biden for the corrupt creep that he is. Russia is being demonized. There's an all-out demonization of Russia going on. And we're about to have a big conference in Chicago. And I find out that people are planning to smear me in some very, very nasty ways. And I called him up, what's the deal? And he says, we're going to have to cancel the conf. It was pretty obvious to me what was going on there. It was very obvious to me what was going on there. And if it's not obvious to you what was going on there, you're very naive, right? I've now been told that people were paid. People were literally paid. I've got screenshots where people admitted they got paid to say shit against me and against the Center for Political Innovation. People got paid money to talk shit about me. And it's now come out. And when the shit hit, there was nothing there. They didn't accuse me of anything. I wasn't accused of anything. They didn't accuse me. I didn't do anything. There's all kinds of innuendo, and I didn't even get accused of doing anything. If you read it, it says I had some inappropriate conversations. I had some flirty text conversations that were completely consensual with people. It says that, it doesn't accuse me of any crime. There's not a single illegal thing listed anywhere in it. The whole thing is completely stupid. And it's a personal attack on me, hitting me in, on aspects of my personal life. And, they threw my wife into it. She had nothing to do with anything. It was a vicious, vile thing that they did. And before they did it, one of the main organizers of it says to me on the phone, "You're going to cancel the conference, aren't you? You're going to cancel the conference." Folks, if you can't see what the haters attacking Scott Ritter, what the haters attacking Tara Reade, what the haters who think the indictment of the Uhuru movement is all fine, it's all fine because I heard on the internet that they're a cult. If you can't understand what's going on here, you're being willfully naive, right? There are, if you just fool around on the internet, nobody cares, right? If you just fool around on the internet, nobody fucking cares. But if you build a real organization and you connect Tara Reade with the Uhuru movement and you put on a reception for Scott Ritter after he gets banned from the Rage Against the War Machine rally, and you go to Russia and you tell him that the American people don't want their tax money to go to Ukraine, and you interview the president of Iran, of the Islamic Republic of Iran at the United Nations, they come after you. Because we're doing real shit. We are doing real shit. There's a lot of people that talk as if they agree with us politically that are screwing around. They're just fucking screwing around. Look, the Palestine rallies. I've been to a couple of them to cover them. And I agree with everything that they're saying. I agree that there needs to be a ceasefire. I agree that the Palestinians are right to fight back. But I have been going to Palestine rallies in New York City for 15 years. I moved here in 2010. I've been going to Palestine rallies, and the chants are the same, and the slogans are the same, and the people going to them are the same, right? Right? And, and it's not changing anything. And the Party of Socialism and Liberation, who stage manages those rallies, goes out of their way to make sure that ordinary Americans don't come to the rallies. They make those rallies woke and hostile, no American flags, Palestine flags only. They make it look like a foreign rally that views the American people as the enemy. They might as well get paid by Israel, right? Because, anyone who doesn't know anything about the issue would feel attacked by those rallies. It looks like an angry woke mob of people from a foreign country with yelling at them, right? We at the Center for Political Innovation, what do we do to support Palestine? Well, I'll I guess I would put images on the screen, but it's not letting me show images on here. But I'll show you what we have done to support Palestine. I'll mute it because I got to keep talking while I do it. Let me see if I can find the video of what the way that we have raised the Palestine issue. If I'll show you the way that we have raised it, we've made a point of raising it in a way that people can actually get it. That's what we have done. I'll show you. We say money for jobs and schools in America, not weapons for Israel. We make a point of actually appealing to the American people, while Brian Becker makes a point of trying to make the American people think that the Palestinians are their enemies, right? We don't do that. We have an approach that could actually win people over, right? There's a lot of people who talk as if they're communists or as if they're anti-imperialists or as if they're anti-war. And in all honesty, they're just screwing around. They're just screwing around. They're not taking this seriously. Are they having events to host Tara Reid? No. Are they having events for the Uhuru movement? No. They're just screwing around, right? And you can pretend that that's not what they're doing, but that is what they're doing. They are just screwing around. We are not just screwing around. We take this seriously. And because we take this seriously, we have been subjected to some of the most vicious attacks. And they have gone after me in ways that are unimaginable. I mean, I'll show you the way we have raised the Palestine issue, right? I've got the video here. I'll show you. I'm going to put it on mute because we're going to keep talking, right? But the majority of American people don't want money for Israel right now, right? The majority of the American people at this point, they want money for jobs and schools in America, not weapons for Israel. And that's what we've been raising with our slogans, with our banner, right? The outreach we've done, we actually, would like to win, right? We're not trying to be woke and make ourselves feel good. We're actually trying to win. And I'll show you, if I can bring the banner up, if I can get a shot of the banner. Yeah, here we go. Get a shot of the banner. But I'll show you the way we approach this issue, right? We approach this in what we understand to be a way that people can actually hear it. So yeah, that's our banner. Money for jobs and schools for America, not weapons for Israel. That's a winning message. The overwhelming majority of the American people agree with it. We've got the American flag to show that we're on the sides of the American people. We've got the flag of the Palestinian people to show we support them. This is how you could actually win. This is how we could actually, get the message across and win people over. But the Party of Socialism and Liberation, they don't want to win over the American people. They think the American people are the enemy. Because they're not woke enough, because they're some of them are Republicans, right? When the Rage Against the War Machine rally happened in Washington, D.C., they smeared it as a Nazi rally, right? Which is basically a call for government repression. And then they tried to block the Uhuru movement from having their rally in Washington, D.C. So this is we're serious about this. We're not fooling around. We're not screwing around. Right? Right? We are actually serious about trying to stop World War III, about building a working class movement in this country, a government of action to fight for working families. We're actually serious about what we're doing. We're actually trying to win over the American people with the work that we are doing. And, and we have been targeted. And it is beyond me why so many people can't get it through their heads that, I'm a reporter for RT News, for Christ's sakes, right? I have literally met and talked to Putin. I've literally met and talked to the president of Iran. I am, we are Scott Ritter's biggest supporters. We're Tara Reid's biggest supporters. We're the biggest supporters of the Uhuru movement. There's a reason that the first thing that happens in this country, if you go into any communist or left space, the first thing they tell you is, oh, that Caleb guy, he's bad. Well, there's a reason for that, because I'm doing this shit that these losers will not do, right? These losers will never talk this way. No, it's this woke. Israel's just like America. It's a racist white settler country, blah, blah, blah. Well, we don't talk that way. We have a winning message. America first, not Israel first, right? That's our message. America first, not Israel first. Jobs and schools for America, not weapons for Israel. This is a message the American people would agree with. Why doesn't the Palestine movement talk this way? Because they don't want to win. That's why. Well, we actually want to win. We actually want to win. We want to win over the American people, right? I mean, that's the point. We're in this because we actually want to stop the wars. We actually want to stop imperialism. We actually want to build a mass working class movement, right? For a government of action that fights for working families. And I see what happened to Scott Ritter, and I'm pissed about it. I'm really, really pissed off about what happened to Scott Ritter. I am not going to lie to you. I am genuinely pissed off about what they did to Scott Ritter. I am genuinely pissed off about Judge Napolitano not being able to go. I don't know the exact details of why, but it still pisses me off because Judge Napolitano is doing great work. I am pissed off that Tara Reade has had to flee and move to another country because the justice system here is so corrupt and they're trying to destroy her. I am pissed off about the Uhuru movement, the People's Democratic Uhuru movement, a group of black revolutionaries, that have been indicted and had their homes raided, and they're trying to put them in jail for 15 years just for going to some conferences in Russia. And I feel a moral obligation to do something about it. And we at the Center for Political Innovation, we feel a moral obligation to do something about it. We got to do something about it, right? It is really creepy that they seized Scott Ritter's passport. It's infuriating, right? And we got to do something about it. I mean, and that being an anti-imperialist is about solidarity. That's what it's about, right? And that's what being an anti-imperialist is about. You always stand with people, and losers always find an excuse not to stand with people, right? And, when the Uhuru movement was being raided, one of these same losers, it sounds like a cult. Oh, they're cringe. I bet the U.S. government pays them to make anti-imperialists look bad. Oh, shut up, right? And, Scott Ritter, they attacked him. Oh, I read blah, blah, blah. Shut up, right? And Tara Reade, she speaks up against Biden. Oh, shut up, right? And Tucker Carlson interviews Chairman O'Malley and stands up for the Uhuru movement. Oh, Tucker Carlson is racist. Oh, shut up, right? And there's always people that they just can't bring themselves to be on the side of the oppressed. They've always got to find some way to be on the side of the enemy. They've always got to find some way. In a lot of cases, it's rooted in jealousy, right? It's rooted in jealousy, right? They feel inadequate. They know what the truth is. They know that the U.S. imperialists are wrong. They know that the FBI is persecuting and oppressing people. They know, but they're jealous of the person who's under attack, right? Oh boy, isn't it great to be under attack, right? I'm sure Scott Ritter loved going to prison for 3 years, right? I'm sure the Uhuru movement are just so happy to be indicted, right? They're so happy to be indicted right now. It's jealousy. It's this pathological jealousy these losers have. Oh, this person's more important than me, and so I've got to show the world that they're bad. I mean, it's so disgusting. And you claim to be an anti-imperialist. If you claim to be an anti-imperialist and you're not standing up for the Uhuru movement, fuck you, right? If you claim to be an anti-imperialist and you're not standing up for Scott Ritter right now, fuck you, right? If you claim to be an anti-imperialist, right, and you are not standing up for Tara Reade right now, fuck you, right? And if you're an anti-imperialist, you claim to be an anti-imperialist, but, that Caleb, I heard, blah, 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 fuck you, all right? You are a useless friend, right? You are a useless friend, okay? Washington Post just launched a smear campaign calling Gray Zone Russian Iranian agents. Yeah, they do great work at Gray Zone, right? And, and people disagree. My understanding of Marxism is very different than Chairman O'Malley's and the African People's Socialist Party. You heard Scott Ritter on there. He's not a Marxist at all, right? He comes at things from a very different, military background, whatever. It's not about that. The U.S. government isn't going after the Uhuru movement because of their position on black nationalism and African internationalism, etc. They're coming after the Uhuru movement because they're anti-imperialist. And I am also anti-imperialist. So I support them, right? It's that simple, right? They're coming after Scott Ritter and taking his passport because he's anti-imperialist. I am also anti-imperialist, so I support them, right? It's that simple. Right? I mean, it's really not that complicated, right? And the fact that there are so many of these internet grifters, or so many of these people that love to talk anti-imperialist on the internet, but they always join the smear campaigns and try to help the FBI destroy the lives and reputations of people who are building real organizations and getting shit done. That needs to be opposed, right? That needs to be opposed. That's cowardly. Right? That's cowardly. It's a cowardly thing to do, right? And it is, it is not helpful, right? And it is not helpful. It is cowardly, and that they don't care if you're vaguely against imperialism on the internet. Oh, look, this guy tweeted against imperialism to all 50 of his followers. No one cares. And they don't care, right? If you get on the internet and you talk up and down and you have a lot of followers, and they don't care. What they care about is a real organization reaching out to real ordinary people, building real relationships to build a real movement to stop imperialism, to bring Americans together, to demand jobs and healthcare and education, not wars around the world, a real movement to demand a government of action to fight for working families. That's what they care about. That is what they care about. I am more Christian now than I've ever been. I rediscovered my Christian faith in 2015 when I was, in an Iranian rescue ship on my way to Yemen. I've rediscovered my Christian faith. I am more Christian than I've ever been. And Jesus Christ told his followers, "Ye shall know them by their fruits." It's one of my favorite quotes. Ye shall know them by their fruits, not ye shall know them by their message. Right? Jesus wasn't the first person to say, love your neighbor. Right? Jesus wasn't the first person to say people should be nice to other people. Right? But they asked him, how do we know that you're Jesus? How do we know that you're the Messiah? And he said, you shall know them by their fruits. What do you do? What do you actually do? That is the challenge. What do you actually accomplish? What do your words mean in real life? Anybody can say anything. Anyone can write anything. Anyone can tweet anything. But what are you doing to build a movement, to bring people together? That is the question. You shall know them by their fruits. And the people that talk a good game until there's a real test, until there's a real challenge, and suddenly they're on the same side as the American government. They talk a good game about Russia and all that, but then somebody comes after Scott and they go, oh yeah, ew, Scott, fuck them, right? It's worthless, right? The people that, and I could go down the line, that the Uhuru movement is indicted by the federal government and they're facing an indictment, right? And the people who go, oh well, they're a cult. I heard that they're a cult. It's not against the law to be a cult. I don't even know what a cult is at this point, but it's not against the law, right? This is America, right? I mean, it was founded by Puritans and Quakers and Shakers, and we got the Mormons and we got the Jehovah's Witnesses, and you can be a cult in America. We have no problem with that. So, if you think the Uhuru movement is a cult, who fucking cares? They shouldn't go to jail because they take stances against war with Russia. They shouldn't go to jail because they went to Russia and shook hands and attended a conference about black people's rights in America. And if people that can't get their mind around that, oh, but I'm afraid someone on the internet might talk against it. Shut up. Just shut up. Seriously, just shut the fuck up. Right? I'm so tired of it. right? And it's such a childish thing, right? You know, and the other thing is that, you know, and this is another thing. Nobody ever gains from, and this is particularly true with social media, right? We talked about taking a stand, building a real organization, but on social media, nobody ever stops getting canceled because they disavow, right? And I learned this really quickly, right? My first couple of years getting canceled, I thought, oh, no, nobody ever gains by going, oh, I have nothing to do with that person, or, oh, I'm so sorry for talking to that person. They don't stop. In fact, that emboldens them, right? It emboldens them because then they think they can control your behavior and they attack you more, right? And I have seen this so many times, right? I have seen this so many times of they attack somebody for, oh, were you just talking to Scott Ritter? Well, Scott Ritter is you know, is blah, 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 you know, and they start with that shit. And then the person goes, oh, I didn't know Scott Ritter was bad. Oh, I'm so, and do they ever stop harassing that person? No, they don't ever stop harassing that person. They don't. They never stop harassing that person. In fact, they harass them more because they say, wow, I just got them to disavow Scott Ritter. Now I can control their behavior, and it emboldens them. You don't gain anything by playing the cancel culture game. You don't gain anything. Nothing. Right? The only answer, if they come to you and say, oh, are you associated with the Uhuru movement? You know, I heard that they're a cult. They come to you and say, oh, you're just supporting Scott Ritter. Don't you know, blah, blah, blah. If they come to you and they say, oh, the only answer that gives you any strength is, yeah, I support them. I don't know about what you're saying. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's not. That's not the issue. I support them because I'm just trying to stop World War III. Fuck you. Fuck you. That's the only answer that gives you any goddamn strength. That is the only answer that gives you any goddamn strength. Right? And when you say that, there's nothing else these fuckers can say. Right? And that's what your answer has to be. Fuck you. Fuck you. That has to be the answer. I stand with people that are under oppressed. I am never going to support the American government as they go after a brave former weapons inspector and peace activist and take his passport. Never going to do it. Scott, I'm with Scott till the end. Scott's an amazing person, an American hero. I am with the Uhuru movement. I am never going to support the American government when they indict a group of black revolutionaries and don't even accuse them of a crime. They don't even accuse them of a crime. Mumia Abu-Jamal, they accused him of killing a police officer. I think he's innocent, but they actually accused him of a crime. The Uhuru movement haven't been charged with a crime. They've been charged with going to Russia and having meetings, having Zoom calls, writing articles, right? They haven't even charged them with a crime. How can you not stand with the Uhuru movement? They claimed that their activism in the black community is being a foreign agent. How can you not stand with the Uhuru movement? How can you not stand with them? And Tara Reade, how can you not stand with Tara Reade? Tara Reade, all she has done is spoken up about what happened to her. And all these people would say, oh, we support women, we believe women. And Tara Reade, her story completely checks out. It completely checks out. Right? I mean, and she filed it at the time. Everything checks out with Tara Reade. How can you not? And then she's been driven out of the country. They've destroyed her reputation. They've targeted her family members. They tried to murder her horse. They drove her all the way out of the United States. How can you not support Tara Reade? Right? I stand with Tara Reade. Absolutely. And that if you don't understand that this is what these evil motherfuckers do, right? The evil motherfuckers who run U.S. imperialism. They are liars. They are evil, right? And they love to play the cancel culture game, and they love to smear people, and they love to call people cults, and they love to attach lies and innuendo to people's names. And if you dig into the facts, it all, yes, they tried to murder her horse, Christina. That is true. They tried to murder her horse. They literally tried to kidnap her horse. She's talked about it on her streams before. It is unbelievable, right? She has a horse and someone tried to steal her horse and kill it. Yes, it is unbelievable, right? And it's like, if you can't get in your mind that this is what they do, right? And they will do it to anybody who starts trying to challenge their power, who builds a real movement. If you can't understand that, you're not helpful. You're not helpful. And I cannot repeat this enough times, right? And, and this case, I mean, the fact that they took Judge Napolitano's passport away, right? Or they took Scott Ritter's passport away. We don't know the details about Judge Napolitano. There's some dispute about that. I showed you what he said, and I guess he's going to give more of an answer about it tomorrow. But he was unable to attend the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. Scott Ritter and Tara Reid were going to speak on the same panel together, right? And they blocked Scott Ritter from going, right? I mean, this is completely unbelievable. And I just cannot reiterate that what we need now more than ever is solidarity, right? If they come for one of us, all of us should speak up. It's that simple. It's that simple. We should all speak up. Now, we've been going here for almost 2 hours. It's a great stream tonight. A lot of you here. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notifications bell. Now, I'm going to do the roll call, and I'm going to answer people's super chat questions. But before I do that, Kamala Harris, right? Kamala Harris, I'm going to show you a video that we did about Kamala Harris because there's a lot of people watching tonight, and I want people to know how dangerous Kamala Harris is. I don't think there has ever been a potential U.S. president more dangerous than our current vice president. So I'm going to put this video on. After that, I will start answering people's questions. We'll do the roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, I answer your super chat questions. So this is the video about Kamala Harris, right? If I can find it. Right. Do we have the video on Kamala? Oh, here we go. Yes. The truth about Kamala Harris. Here we go.
What's bizarre is she's trying to frame herself as Miss Black Lives Matter, when in reality, Kamala Harris was the queen of mass incarceration. Kevin Cooper was hours away from receiving lethal injection. Hours away from it. His lawyers asked that DNA evidence be acquired in order to make sure he was actually guilty of the crime. And Kamala Harris's office tried to prevent DNA evidence from being acquired. They wanted Kevin Cooper to be executed, but the governor of California disagreed. They acquired DNA evidence, and the execution was stopped. The New York Times tells us that she feels really bad about it, for whatever that means. And people can also recall that while she was head of the California State Attorney General's office, over 1,000 people were locked up for smoking marijuana. She presided over jailing a lot of people. And on top of that, the drug labs in the state of California that were being used by the police were turning up false positive results. And yet, Kamala Harris's office did not tell the defense attorneys or the judges about this. They knew that the drug labs were turning over false positives, and people went to prison because her office concealed that their drug labs were turning up false positives. And another thing about Kamala Harris, I don't know if people saw, but there's a video of Kamala Harris where she's bragging about how she jailed the parents of children who were truant from school.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it.
Have you seen the clip? And she gets up there, and it's the same kind of thing. She's giggling. Yes, I had the idea that we could lock up parents who are truant from school. You know, I wouldn't be anywhere in my life if it weren't for my education. And so not giving a child their education is a crime. And so I jailed parents, and she's giggling about it. It's just so great. And, you know, I see so much in U.S. media. They like to trivialize incarceration. There's so many shows on Netflix and all of that where it ends towards the end where someone goes to jail, but it's part of the happy ending. It's okay. And they don't seem to realize what that means. You know, when one member of a family, when a father or a mother goes to prison, or a brother or a sister, it hurts the entire family. And when Kamala Harris is up there giggling about, I locked up these parents because their kids weren't in school. You know, yeah, kids need to be in school. The kids aren't getting to school, it's a problem. But the worst thing you could do is then throw their parents in jail. That's not going to help the situation in any conceivable way. But when she's joking about it, and she's laughing about it, Kamala Harris, she says, what did she say? She said, well, I wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for my education. It's about her. The big line when she was calling out Joe Biden, when she was trying to contend with Joe Biden in the presidential election, what did she shout at Joe Biden? She shouted, that little girl was me!
You know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
And then her campaign started churning out T-shirts with the face of 10-year-old Kamala Harris on them. Do you remember this? Yes. It's almost like she wants us to vote for her because she was once a 10-year-old child. I mean, that's what it sounds like. What's particularly interesting is, you remember when Barack Obama was running for president. We knew everything about Barack Obama. We knew all about Barack Obama's pastor. We knew about Barack Obama's father from Kenya. We knew the school he went to in Indonesia. But Kamala Harris, barely anybody knows anything about Kamala Harris. Well, Kamala Harris's mother, who's now deceased, was from India, was a cancer researcher. And Kamala Harris's father, Donald Harris, was a Marxist economist and is a Marxist economist, a professor at Stanford University. He was an advisor to the government of Michael Manley in Jamaica. And he and Kamala are estranged from one another. He did not attend Kamala's inauguration as vice president. They're not on good speaking terms. But the more you look at it, it's very clear that Kamala Harris sees herself as a victim. The way Kamala Harris speaks, the world has been unfair to her. And she blames Donald Harris for that to some degree or other. We don't know why. We also, there's rumors, we don't really know what happened when she was in Quebec. We just know she never talks about the years that she spent in Quebec. But Kamala Harris thinks that she is a victim. And she wants the whole world to know that that little girl was her. And she wants vengeance. And she wants to make people pay. And she wanted to make Kevin Cooper pay. And she wanted to make those parents pay. That's what leftism is if it's stripped of economics, if it's stripped of class struggle, if it's stripped of a desire to have the people rise up and control the means of production, if it's just anger, if it's just revenge, it's just a call for destruction, a call for rebellion, that's what Kamala Harris is. Kamala Harris, she's very much a guillotine meme. That's what she is. It's the glorification of punishment, a desire for revenge, a desire for destruction. And that if you look at the history of socialism around the world, the strength of socialism wasn't the guillotines, it wasn't the firing squads, it wasn't the persecution. That's not what people remember the strength of socialism being. They just did a poll. 75% of Russians say that the Soviet Union was the best time in their history, but they're not thinking that because of executions. This was from a PBS documentary. They interviewed a woman named Tatiana Fedorova.
Stalin set a task. Build this or build that. And thanks to the fact that people trusted him and this enthusiasm of young people, it was possible. Remember, this was a country where people were illiterate, lived in virtual darkness, wore birch bark shoes. Even now, I think it's like something out of a fairy tale. How was it possible at one of the most difficult times to raise these great construction sites? It was only possible through the unity of the people and the love of the people for their idol.
And the reason Stalin remains wildly popular in Russia, it's not because he executed people, it's because he mobilized them to build that country up from nothing. This was a country... He built some of the world's largest power plants, he wiped out illiteracy, and he built a modern industrial country. He raised millions of people up out of poverty. And then they fought off the Nazi invaders, and then they rebuilt the country again, and a few years later they were the first country in outer space. And the strength of socialism was not that it punished people and that it persecuted people, but rather that it enabled people to go out and build and construct. I've said to many people, I'm not a socialist because I want to destroy America. I'm a socialist because I want to save America. And we have to save America from the horrors that are being unfolded by an irrational system where profits come before people. I want to save America. I want to build a better world. If all the apparatus they've created for destroying people, for imprisoning people, for breaking people psychologically, could be utilized to build and to construct. The popular power were put in control of the means of production and control of the state apparatus of the United States. We could build something very, very beautiful.
They want you to be mad at Russia and China instead of the looters that are sitting not very far from here off Wall Street, who are actively getting bailouts in the billions, arguably even in the trillions, for their gambling debts. That's what we're here against, and that's why we're taking a stand for freedom of speech, because they're going after the Yahoo movement and anyone who stands against the imperialists, because they know we're a real threat and that's rising. They know we authentically represent the American people. They know that the American people are ready for a change and ready for an end to the wars. And that's why they're cracking down on our First Amendment. They're cracking down on our Fourth Amendment. They're cracking down on all of the civil liberties we know and love.
Yeah, so yeah, that's our clip on Kamala Harris. But I wanted to remind everybody before we do the roll call. I talked about this earlier on the stream. I want to remind everybody again. I am going to be in Los Angeles at the end of the week. Friday night, I will be speaking at LA Family Church, and it's an event dedicated to peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. It's going to be a great event. I'm putting the link in the chat. It's not letting me show like images on the screen right now. Something's wrong with StreamYard, but I'm putting a link to the tweet where I have the poster. It's in Monterey Park, 7 p.m. It's on Friday in Los Angeles. And I'm just putting the link here in the chat. It's a link to the tweet where you can see the poster. And I'm going to be speaking alongside a friend of mine who is named Reverend Joshua Holmes. And he is a minister out there in Los Angeles. And he is obviously dedicated, to peace on the Korean Peninsula. Why is a church talking about reuniting with Korea? Well, this is a church from Korea, and that they have actually done a lot to support people's Korea over the years. I believe the founder of their church was given one of the highest medals from North Korea before he died. I believe the reunification medal, a lifetime achievement of working for reunification, was given to the founder of their church. It's a long story, and we can talk about it. But I wanted to show you the minister that I'm going to be speaking alongside. On Friday night, he was preaching this Sunday. I'd listened to his sermon this Sunday in LA, and he actually said he made some brilliant observations tonight. This was a clip from his sermon that he gave this Sunday. This is the guy that I'll be speaking with. It'll be me and him. It'll be two speakers and then a Q&A afterwards out at LA Family Church. Me and Reverend Joshua Holmes. And I want to show you this clip from his sermon on Sunday.
I hear this rhetoric nowadays, which is, it would be better off if human beings just died. Shocking, right? On Magda, wow. But I hear this rhetoric. It's like, it's better, it'd be better for this world if human beings were to just pass away. It's this really kind of, in my opinion, it's quite painful thing to say. But I hear this rhetoric more and more often, especially when I was in college, which was gladly not too long ago, right? And in my college time, I'd read these posts from people. It's like, this world would be better off. We're almost like a disease somehow to this world. But that is completely, anti what God has created this world for. Is that we are designed We were brought into this world as God's sons and daughters for the purpose of taking care of this world. Have we done the best of jobs? No. Have we made our best effort? I think some people have made a great effort. But we still have a ways to go in terms of having good dominion over creation. But we're not called to leave this world. We're called to take care of it, to own it, and allow it to blossom even further. Allow creation to be fulfilled. We participate in fulfilling God's life and ideal when the love of God flows through us and touches all things in this world. And he goes,
yeah, that's brilliant. And I mean, he hit the nail right on the head. If there's ever been a message, on the CPI T-shirts that we have, the blue T-shirts, I've got one over there. Maybe I'll go get it. The slogan that we've used, was coined by our president, Elizabeth Young, who's out in Portland. She said, pro-humanity, pro-growth. Pro-humanity, pro-growth, because this Malthusianism, this idea there's too many people in the world, it's great preaching, isn't it? Pro-humanity, pro-growth, this idea that human beings are the problem. I mean, this is just dangerous. And I mean, are we shocked that young people nowadays are very depressed, that there's no hope for the future? We shouldn't be shocked by this at all. So I'm going to be speaking out at LA Family Church about it'll be an event dedicated to peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. It's going to be a great event. I'm very excited. And Reverend Joshua is a great friend of mine, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting event because obviously I'm coming at things from my background and they're coming at things from their background, but we can agree, right? And that is the point. The point is to build relationships. The point is to stop the dangerous direction the world is going. And the Korean Peninsula, right now, people are talking about Gaza. They're talking about, Russia and Ukraine. They're talking about what might happen on Taiwan. But people are not noticing how intense things are getting on the Korean Peninsula right now. Right. And I can't, it's already been 2 hours. I'm not going to get into that here tonight, but I'm going to get into it out in LA. So I hope that you will join us out in Los Angeles. It's going to be a great event. It'll be 7 p.m. at LA Family Church in Monterey Park. I'm linking the tweet in the chat with the time and place. I'll read it off again, but you can just click the link. You'll see the beautiful poster with me and Reverend Joshua on it. But it's 2301 Finley Avenue, Monterey Park, California, Los Angeles Family Church. And it'll be me and Pastor Joshua Holmes will be speaking about North and South Korea Unity Symposium, Removing the Line. It's going to be a really, really great event. South Korea should be unified. I totally agree. It's not going to be live streamed. There will be hopefully video after. I'll do my best to make sure we at least have an audio if there's not a video after. I know people are very excited, but just come and be there, right? I've talked to a lot of people from our community that are already coming out. I was on the phone with Dan. Shout out to Dan. I was on the phone with some other people. I know a lot of people from the area. I know Ishmael is planning to come, and just come. It's going to be great. So join us. So, all right, now we're going to do our roll call, where I'll call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, I will answer people's questions, right? And it's been a long stream tonight, but a lot of people are watching. We're all outraged about what happened with Scott Ritter. So there we go. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? We got Mark Jones in Utica, New York. Dustin Schlesinger in Cleveland, Ohio. We got the seasoned noob in China, Ryan Clark in Kansas City. Joe in Los Angeles. Stand up for the oppressed and find yourself. You going to be there, Joe? Nate in Chicago. Alex in Oregon, Auckland, New Zealand. Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Arnold in Corpus Christi. Moonlight Beach, Scott S. Alex in Brazil. Cyrus Cornwall. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Rachel in Winder, Georgia. Jamie in Boise, Idaho. Is there a big volcano in Yellow Spring, Wyoming? No, there's a geyser, but not a volcano. April and Chris in Salt Lake City. Bob in Troy, New York, right? Carolina in Berlin. Missouri in the Ozarks. Oh, I saw Phil. Phil is in the house. Phil High is in the house. Philippi is in the house. Tony in Tasmania. is in the house. Very, very good. Mariah out in North Carolina. Good to have you, Mariah. Always good to have you here. We got Peg from San Diego is with us. Josh from St. Louis. Nick in Las Vegas. Jinhao Choi in Sydney, Australia. Patrick in Maine. Santa Ana, California. Jacksonville, Florida. Jacob Arthur. Jeff in Delaware, Tenon in Texas, Brad in Cleveland, Anway in India, Patrick in Maine, Crooklyn in Brooklyn, Kevin in North Carolina, Greg in Newcastle, Australia, Balthazar in Oakland, American Vessel State. God bless all of you. Well, thank you, and God bless you as well. Louisville, Illinois, Randy Rains, Cobra from Warm Rock, Arizona, Goodfella in Tanzania. Welcome. African continent. So there we go. Aziz, Sydney. Chicago, Joseph Johnson from Chicago. Chattanooga, Wendy Hughes from Chattanooga. Right? Right. We got Nick Cage in Hollywood. Texas loves Russia. Very good. I will pray for all of you. Thank you. Kirill in Chicago. Welcome, Kirill. Good to have you with us. Wales. Black Tie in Wales. Chattanooga. Carby in Tennessee. You missed my name, says Mohican. I'm sorry I missed your name. Feel free to put it in again. David Fox, our good friend out in Bendigo, Australia. David is great. He's starting a reading group of our new textbook, by the way. So if you want to get involved in that, send me an email. I'll pass it on to David Fox if you're an Australian. He's starting an Australian reading group. Christina is doing the American reading group. If you want to be involved in that, you can email me. We're always looking for people to join the reading group. I think they just had a meeting tonight. Chicago doctor, very good. Melbourne, Australia. We got, does Ohio have two O's? Why, yes, it does, Robert. Ohio. That's right. Jenny Lynn, that's right. Ohioans unite. Yes, I'm originally from Ohio, small town in Ohio called Orville, where they make Smucker's jelly. It's the home of basketball coach Bobby Knight. Mark Sloboda won in Shanghai. Now, is that the real Mark Sloboda? Or is that just somebody who's a fan of Mark Sloboda? If it's the real Mark Sloboda, shout out to you. If it's a fan of Mark Sloboda, shout out to you as well. Love your work, Mark Sloboda. Mark Sloboda is great, does great anti-imperialist analysis. He's always on RT and on Crosstalk doing great work. So if that is the real, if that is the real Mark Sloboda, by all means, shout out to you. And if not, you're a fan like I am. I'm a fan of Mark Sloboda. Mark is awesome. Dave in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Anybody else? The Philippines. We got folks from the Philippines. Kenya. Wow. Kenya. Very, very good. Lots of Ohioans here. Maybe my accent attracts them, right? Mohican D gives me a heart. USA equals Banana Republic. They're trying to jail Donald Trump, so I would agree with that. Names and locations. Names and locations. Peter in Sweden. Wow. Very international audience tonight, but we're all outraged about Scott. All right, folks. So now I will start answering your super chat questions. I am the genuine article. It's an honor and pleasure to be on your stream. Well, thank you, Mark. It's an honor to have you here. I love your work. You are a great anti-imperialist intellectual whom I respect. Go check out Mark Sloboda. He does great work. He's a brilliant analyst. Tony in Tasmania, Tasmania, Australia. I am Polish, Russian. I ain't in Germany, just so you know. All right. So everyone who's here, make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get notified the next time we do one of these. Glad to have you here with us. Finland here. Craig in Kansas City. Very, very good. All right. But do subscribe so you get invited to the next one. Good to have you all here for our late night streams. Radio Sputnik on Rumble. Very, very good. All right. So now StreamYard is weird, so I have to scroll up to start answering people's questions, but I'm going to start answering people's super chat questions. So if you've got a super chat or a Rumble rant, by all means, send it in. I will answer your questions for the remainder of our show. The rest of the show will be me answering people's questions as they come in. So if you got something you want me to talk about, the first super chat came in from Gala. She said, just wanted to say, I love Caleb. I hope he knows how much his work means to me and the impact it has. Hope you all have a good stream. I always watch the next day. My nights have been busy. Love you, Caleb. Keep up the good work. Well, that's our good friend Gala in Texas. And she is a great, great anti-imperialist and a great person. And she has got lots of brilliant insights about Russia, and she's been real supportive of our community. So my hat goes off to you, Gala. If I had a hat, I would take it off to you. Thank you for your support, and shout out to you and your whole family out there in Texas. You do great work, and we stay strong. Down with imperialism for a world, for a government of action that fights for working families here in the United States of America. That is what we want. All right. And I'm scrolling to the next one. There may be some Rumble rants, though. So maybe I need to check Rumble here. So we'll do the next super chat, and then I will. Okay. The next super chat is, are Jill Stein and Claudia Dela Cruz still in the presidential race? Yes. The answer is yes. They are third-party candidates. They are third-party candidates, and they are still in the race. Okay, so we have two Rumble rants on the Rumble. But yeah, before you go, Jill Stein is running as the Green Party presidential candidate, and I'm actually quite impressed with her campaign as it's developed. She adopted support for the Uhuru movement in her platform. Excellent. She also called for a plank of something we've advocated in CPI, which is a tax on landlords for empty housing units in order to drive down the price of rent. Because right now, the reason the rent keeps rising is because landlords at this point in major cities, they don't have to pay for empty housing units, and they often don't make their money by people living in the housing units. They make their money through real estate speculation. They buy the property, value goes up, they sell it. So if nobody moves into the apartment, that's fine. And they keep the rents very high because that increases the value of the building, and they can make more money off the building, the property value. And so if you started taxing landlords for empty housing units, that would cause the landlord to have an incentive to make sure they filled up the apartments, and then they would put the rent down. And that would offset any incentive they'd have to keep the rents high in order to real estate speculation. Real estate speculation, the fact that landlords make money from housing without people actually living in the buildings, it's a big problem, right? And that it could be addressed by making sure that there's an incentive for landlords to have people in every unit. So we've got two Rumble rants on the Rumble. First one is from Patrick. Patrick says, Patrick here. One of your many streams, you said that Kamala Harris and people who surround her are attempting to do a color revolution in India. The reason I asked is because there's election going on over there. Well, Kamala Harris's niece lives in India, and she lives in India. Her name is Meena Harris. And she is working for, a George Soros NGO that's tied in with the State Department that works against the president of India, Modi. And it looks like Modi is going to win the election, right? From everything that I've seen, Modi is going to win. And that's why the USA is already declaring it to be an unfair election, right? Because how dare somebody, the USA doesn't like win. Now, Modi's not a communist or an anti-imperialist. Modi, he goes either way. Sometimes he goes with the United States. Sometimes he goes with Russia. He's very hostile to China, but he's independent, right? And he didn't agree with U.S. foreign policy in Syria. He's very pro-Israel, which obviously I don't agree with. So he's all over the place, but he's independent, right? And he's very much in favor of the BRICS that are going down, an independent currency. For the BRICS, he has refused to cut off Russia in the way that the United States has demanded of him. So because of that, the USA is trying to overthrow him. And Kamala Harris's niece is this like woke activist in India who's being funded by George Soros to try and overthrow Modi. As John says, it's an unfair election because they didn't show their opponent in jail. Exactly. Right. It's in the United States, we have totally fair elections, right? Where Donald Trump has been is being railroaded to jail to make sure he doesn't win. That's fair. right? But in India, it's considered an unfair election in American media because Modi, who is not a solid, he's not a puppet of the United States, is going to win. And so Kamala Harris's niece is there organizing destabilization. After the election happens, she's probably going to be out in the streets leading people to say it's unfair. So there you go. And so, I mean, Modi is a complex figure. He's from the BJP, which is the Hindu nationalist party of India. He's certainly not a leftist, but the fact that the USA is already declaring it an unfair election, they're mad at Modi because he's not anti-Russian enough, and Kamala Harris's niece is there destabilizing things. And that really gets to, I wrote my book about Kamala Harris, and and I'm actually probably going to write another book about Kamala Harris soon. I mean, there's a project in the works. Don't want to say too much about it. But the main thing about Kamala Harris is that she is unwell psychologically. She has trauma. She hates her father. She and her father are estranged from each other. And the people around her have figured out how to push her buttons. She's a very, very dangerous person. And I've talked about this on many, many streams and all of that. And she's tied in with this color revolution apparatus that the United States sends all over the world to destabilize countries. And, it's got the whole LGBT thing as part of it, and women and feminism, and that they use this to overthrow governments. And this is a problem. So, Kamala Harris is very much tied in with that apparatus. The intellectual who's very much responsible for Kamala Harris, her name is Anne Marie Slaughter, right? And Anne Marie Slaughter, she wrote an op-ed right after Trump was elected that was published in Foreign Affairs magazine, where she believes the fight in the world today is against populism. And the answer to populism is what she calls the open international system, free trade, free information, etc., to beat down populists. And she considers Trump a populist, but she also considers Putin a populist. She also considers Xi Jinping a populist. She considers these various leaders to be populists, and they want to beat down populists around the world, like Trump, like Modi, like Maduro in Venezuela, like Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua. They want to beat down populists and just spread this open international system in the name of LGBT and women's rights, etc. And that's what they want, and it's particularly not good. And Meena Harris, who is Kamala Harris's niece, is very much in India making all of this happen. And she's part of the efforts against Modi. So that answers your question. Then Dot Green Perfis said, no question, just a thank you. Thank you for highlighting Scott today and for building an organization to fight for a government of action. Well, thank you. Thank you, Rachel. I really do appreciate that. We're doing the best we can, it's hard. Right. And people don't seem to understand that building a real organization puts you at risk. Right. And it's much more dangerous. And there's a reason they've come after Scott because of his efforts to build peace marches. There's a reason they've come after Tara Reid. Look, there's a reason they're trying to throw Donald Trump in jail right now. And I really wish people could understand that. Anyway, I don't want to revisit everything, but we have another Rumble rant. Jamie Turner says, in one of his recent interviews, Tucker Carlson claimed the Red Army, quote, raped every woman in Germany. Thoughts? Well, I don't think we should deny that after the Red Army liberated Germany, there were mass rapes. That happened. And there were mass rapes by U.S. troops in Germany after World War II, right? If you see the movie Fury, there's a movie called Fury that's about a tank division in World War II. I think it stars Matt Damon. And I watched that movie, and there's a scene where they're going into Germany, and they walk into a house, and there's a woman sitting at the house. I think she's playing the piano, and he pulls his gun out, and I thought, oh my God, are they gonna show this? Right? Are they gonna show this? And they didn't. Right? It was Brad Pitt, right? Not Matt Damon, and they didn't. And then he says, "Make me tea." But yes, when U.S. troops went into Berlin, or they didn't go into Berlin, but when they went into Germany, mass rapes. And when the Soviet troops went into Berlin, they liberated Berlin, but there were, and that's wrong, right? And I think we can acknowledge that's wrong. Now, the Soviet Union, from what I understand, there was a big crackdown. There were some executions for that kind of activity. But it happened, right? And that's a horrific thing. And that's not, we're not proud that happened. I don't think that that's a good thing. But, you know, World War II was a pretty awful event all around. The Holocaust was very awful. 27 million Russian people dying in the Second World War was pretty awful. You can bet that there was a lot of rape from the German soldiers when they went into Russia, and that, you know, World War II was pretty horrible in many ways. And that is one of the ways that it was horrible. And there were atrocities. And this is the kind of thing you got to be careful with, right? You know, I mean, obviously the Americans were right in World War II. The Nazis were wrong. Obviously the Soviet Union and China were on the right side, fighting against Japan, fighting against Italy and Germany. Obviously one side was right and one side was wrong in World War II. No question about it. However, it did the good side in World War II do some bad things? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, for example, right? Japanese internment. That was horrible. Millions of Americans were rounded up only because of their Japanese heritage and thrown in concentration camps. That was wrong. Does that mean that the Nazis were right? No. Does that mean that the American government wasn't right to defeat the Nazis? No. It just means that in the process of being right, they did something that was wrong. Right. And that there's nuance in the world. Right. And did this, I think the Soviet Union did amazing things. They led the world in the fight against fascism. You know, they turned the tide of the war. They built the anti-fascist coalitions in the lead up to the war. They'd been organizing the people on the Korean Peninsula to fight for their independence. They've been organizing the people of China to fight off the Japanese invaders. But did the Soviet Red Army do bad things when they took Berlin? Yep. I mean, I think that's pretty, you know, firebombing Tokyo was very wrong. A lot of civilians died. Mark Sloboda has a very good point, right? A lot of civilians died in the firebombing of Tokyo. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that was wrong. That didn't have to happen, right? That was absolutely not necessary from a military standpoint. That doesn't make the Nazis right. That doesn't make the American government and the anti-fascist alliance wrong, right? And you talk about the U.S. Civil War, right? Obviously, Abraham Lincoln was right. Obviously, slavery and the Confederacy was wrong. But Sherman's March to the Sea, you know, there was a lot of atrocities committed by Union soldiers against Southern folks, against a lot of Southern folks who weren't slave owners. You know, a lot of Southern folks who, you know, were just poor Southern people who happened to be living there. So we can admit that that was wrong, right? That war is a pretty evil, awful thing that brings out the worst in people, that brings out the very dark side of humanity. And we don't ever want to belittle that. And this is something, and I'm going to actually touch on this briefly when I speak in LA, is that there, you know, there are two sides to every story. And this is something we often forget. There are two sides to every story. And that, you know, I mean, look, if somebody who lived in Georgia, right, you know, a plantation owner in Georgia, if their version of World War II was, you know, well, everything was great, and then the evil Union Army came and burned my house and violently beat up, and I mean, that would they be lying if they said that? No, they wouldn't be lying. That's their experience. Does that make slavery good? No, you know. And that we often forget that there are two sides to every story, and that, you know, that here in the United States, we often get one side of every war. And the reason that we get that one side is because we are aligned with that side, right? And the people that lose the war or lose the revolution, you know, the Cubans who come to the United States, I mean, some of them exaggerate and tell tall tales, but some of them are telling the truth. Some of them experienced a lot of awful things. You know, so you have to view things with nuance, and that yeah, I mean, you know, what Tucker Carlson said about mass rapes in Germany, that happened and that was awful. And I mean, there's not much more to it than that. And, you know, and one thing that does, I think, not help is when people, they see an event like that, you know, and they either try to belittle it and say it was no big deal. Well, no, it was a big deal. It was a big deal to those women that were violently assaulted. All right. Or people try to deny it, and there's no use denying it. It happened. Right. So there's nuance to all these things. Anyway, so all right. So let's get to the next super chat question. Dun-dum, 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 dun-dum. All righty. Scrolling up to the next super chat question. If anyone has any more super chats or anything, feel free to let me know. Feel free to send a super chat. Always happy to talk on here. Just making sure I don't miss any. Got to scroll up. Okay. Did I do this one? Oh, no. All right. Scrolling up, right? A lot of people in the chat tonight. Chat's way bigger than it used to be. That's good. I appreciate that. We got a full house here tonight, and that's good. All right, let me make sure that's the last one. Is that? Yes. Okay. The next one. All right. How to win the information war living in a capitalist country? Well, you don't. I mean, it's that simple. You don't. Right? We will never be able to out whiz bang and out media the ruling class. I'm all for, media to represent our pro-working families, anti-war, peace with Russia, peace with China message. But they're always going to be able to have more mass media than we do. They're always going to be able to get their message out more effectively than we do. The way that we win is we build a movement, right? We organize people. During the Great Depression, the Communist Party built mass organizations that rallied people that were homeless and hungry because of the Great Depression to fight for jobs and demand economic relief. They built industrial unions and the steel mills and all that. That's the way we win. We're never going to be able to out information them, right? We build a movement, and it's through joining that movement that people understand how things work, right? And there's no substitute for that, right? And the internet was much more open 3 or 4 years ago than it is now. Just had a great phone call with some people that do a printing company here in New York, some kind of progressive, anti-imperialist, anti-war people that run a printing company here in New York. And I was talking to them, and they said, well, part of the reason we're running this printing company is the internet used to be a lot more open. But a lot of people that are anti-war and a lot of people, they're realizing that the internet is way more rigged than it used to be. It's way more rigged than it used to be. People get shadow banned and suppressed. They're trying to take Alex Jones' website away from him at this point. I mean, it's, so we're going to have to go back to doing things the old-fashioned way. And CPI, we're planning a mass door-knocking outreach campaign. We're planning to do that coming up in the next 3 months. We are in the process of just kind of assembling the materials, and we're launching an outreach campaign to put door knockers on people's doors, to hand out palm cards to people who would never come across this message, right? And we're trying to put together material. We just had a great meeting about doing that, and we're in the process of putting together the materials to launch a several-month campaign. But yeah, out of social media to the masses. Social media is rigged, right? Social media is completely rigged. So, yeah, there you go. And yeah, you don't, right? The means of information are run by the ruling class. We have to build a mass movement, and there's no substitute for building a mass movement. There really is no substitute for it. And, we have in the past gotten boosts from social media, and we like that, right? We appreciate that, but those days are over. There's no shortcuts. You have to just do the hard work of building a mass movement, right? And I'm in this to build a mass movement. That's what I'm in this for. I've spent my entire adult life in communist groups trying to build a movement. And I tell people the left left me, I've rediscovered my Christian faith and my views have changed. I'm in line with where the global anti-imperialist movement is at. But these woke people are not. And as the left got, quote unquote, wokeified, it became very, very clear that, my views were switching, and I saw Donald Trump and his presidential campaign very differently. And that's a whole story I can tell some other time. So I'm just looking for more super chats here. Okay. So a lot of messages in the chat tonight. So just want to make sure I don't miss any. Yeah. Wow. A lot of people here. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notifications bell. Are you familiar with Dr. Vladimir Brovkin and his work? I am not. So let's Google him. Vladimir Brovkin. This is a historian. Russia after Lenin, Russian-born American historian, excuse me, associate professor at Harvard University in the 1990s. Well, I'm not familiar with him. I'll have to check him out, right? Generally, Russian history in the United States, you get Timothy Snyder, but yeah, I'll have to check out his work. I am not familiar with his work. So there we go. There we go. There we go. All right. I'm scrolling through here. There was another super chat from John McCarthy. John McCarthy, I think he asked about Gray Zone. But we'll put that on the screen. We'll put his super chat on the screen. If anyone has anything else, by all means, just looking for John's chat here. Chat's way bigger than it usually is. So that's good, though, right? It seems like a lot of people saw what happened to Scott and were outraged about it. And we're here and we're speaking up for truth. All right. Washington Post just launched a smear against Gray Zone, calling them Russian and Iranian agents. Wow. I mean, that's crazy. So that is absolutely crazy. And you know, I mean, again, they come for all of us, and nobody gains anything by, you know, going, oh, well, I'm not like Gray Zone. No, Gray Zone does great work, great stories, great stuff, you know, and maybe occasionally we might disagree on something. I can't think of anything that they've done I've disagreed with over the years. I mean, they actually quoted me in their expose about BreadTube and all of that, and I appreciated that. You know, I got, you know, they consulted with me after I wrote the BreadTube book, and you know, so I generally like Gray Zone, but even if we didn't, right, if they're targeting them because they do anti-imperialist reporting and all of that, we got to stand with them. This culture of disowning and disavowing people and not standing with people when they're under attack must stop. Right. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at in the stream tonight. I was trying to get at why we stand with Scott, why we've worked so hard to support Scott. That's what I'm trying to get at. So, you know, there you go. All right. Well, if anyone else has anything, now is the time to speak. If not, we will probably wrap this up. It's been a great stream tonight. We got talked about Scott. We talked about a lot of things. Welcome everybody who's new. That's always great. But yeah, if anyone else has any other super chats, rumble rants, questions, now would be the time to raise them. If not, we'll be back tomorrow night. I'm going to be traveling Thursday and Friday out to LA to, you know, give my talk. If you all, if you all are around, I'll probably be on tomorrow night. I'm just looking at some of the stuff. Tonight's chat has been absolutely crazy. Right. Oh, thank you, Jonathan. Doing my best. I'll be on tomorrow night. I actually had some material prepared for tonight that I'll probably do tomorrow night. Wanted to react to some different things that have been said, the Tiananmen anniversary and things like that. So, it's been a long stream tonight. We started later than usual, but it went great. And, so we'll be back. Thanks everybody. Come see me in LA. If you're around in Los Angeles, it's going to be a great event. I'm looking forward to it, working hard on my presentation. And I guess we'll put on the closing music. All righty. Just finding the closing music here. All righty. Here we go. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. All right. Thanks, everybody.